A whistleblower priest is receiving death threats, while the bishops he accused of covering up clerical sex abuse meet with Pope Francis. Join us with the latest from the Eternal City. Church Militant's Rome correspondent, Dr. Jules Gomes. Jules, while we praise whistleblower priests, for coming forward and helping cleanse the church, they sometimes face dire consequences for blowing that whistle. Can you tell us about this latest priest?
Brad, Father Nicholas Betticher is a high-profile whistleblower priest, and he's a former vicar general of the Diocese of Lausanne, Freiburg, and Geneva. He's come forward with devastating allegations against 6 bishops and a number of priests, and not just as a result of his accusations, but also as a result of a Swiss, university study. Pope Francis has summoned some of the top bishops to Rome to talk about this.
So, before we get into the bishops' meeting in Rome, can you tell us more specifics on the types of threats Betticher has received?
Definitely death threats, phone calls, anonymous letters, a coffin left outside his door, and satanic signs scribbled on his parish church door. He says that the police have been informed and the police are worried. They've asked him to take this very seriously.
Now, Jules, you reported back in September on the allegations leveled by this priest against 6 bishops. What were his allegations and which bishops were accused? And then tell us a little bit about these bishops, these very bishops coming to Rome this week.
Well, the allegations are very similar to what the University of Zurich, a very well-publicized study, reported on over 1,000 victims. A report that has devastated the small country of Switzerland and its Catholic population. At least 3 bishops have been named by Father Betticher, and they are Bishop Jean-Marie Lovy of Zion, Bishop Charles Morero of Lausanne, Geneva, and Freiburg, and Bishop Alain de Remy, Bishop for Young People in Switzerland. Now, one of the allegations is that Bishop Alain de Remy and a predator priest jointly owned a chalet in Valais where a victim was sexually abused. The bishop, of course, denies this relationship and the fact that they owned the chalet together. But Father Nicholas is making these charges, and something that is really upsetting a lot of people.
Jules, one of the bishops in Switzerland there, whether how thick he is into this scandal of crisis of sex abuse or not, he has some interesting takes on the priesthood. Could you tell us about him as well?
Brad, we're talking about Bishop Joseph Bonneman, who is supposedly an Opus Dei bishop, priest. And despite that background, he has some very heterodox views on all things Catholic. He's in favor of the ordination of women. He wants to drop mandatory celibacy for Catholic priests of the Latin Rite. He says things like this: I have quite a few friends, including priests, who are homosexual, and he is very strongly in favor of giving homosexual couples the right to adopt children. In April 2022, he ordered his clergy to, I quote, refrain from sweeping negative assessments of allegedly unbiblical behavior based on sexual orientation. And then in November 2022, the bishop abolished the office of exorcist in his diocese, insisting that most people have emotional, psychological burdens and need support, prayer, blessings, appropriate church services, but not necessarily a major exorcism. So you can tell a lot from his track record where he stands on this whole issue, Brad.
Wow. Okay. So now these problems of sex abuse, Jules, just for some perspective here, while they seem really monumental during this period of time in the church, do have at least some trace roots going all the way back to the early ages of the church, according to some historians. Can you get us up to speed on that?
I've just started reading a very interesting book by Diane Elliott. It's an academic book published by the University of Pennsylvania Press. It's called The Corrupter of Boys, Sodomy, Scandal, and the Medieval Clergy. Now, very brilliantly, meticulously documented work. And Professor Elliott talks about how the fact that, she started writing the book because of the current state of the clerical sex abuse crisis. And one thing that immediately jumped out at her was the extent not, she says, of, sodomite sexual abuse, but of the cover-up. And then when she began to do her historical research, she found that both the sodomy, the endemic extent of sodomy in the clergy and the cover-up went right back to the 4th and 5th century. Let me quote. She says, what we are witnessing in the contemporary church is no aberration, but a continuation of a practice that spanned centuries.
Now, that would be her take on that as far as how comparing how endemic it was back then versus now. I'm not sure if they have a purview on that. But, Jules, let's look at the whistleblowers themselves. You've had quite a bit of experience with whistleblowers coming forward, as we've had also. And what's been your common thread, common experience with these whistleblowers?
I can sum it up in one word, Brad, and that is fear. Colloquially, if I can use a colloquialism, they are freaked out. They are terrified. They are traumatized. They suffer this tremendous burden of guilt. They know that they know somebody or more, bishops and priests who are abusing minors, abusing adults, living in sexual sin. They even have documentation to prove it. They have witnessed these things, but they fear what is going to happen to me. And some of them come from small communities, maybe rural areas, and even though we promise them 100% anonymity, they tell me, they said, however, we know you're going to, sources are sacred for you, but if, somehow it is traced to us, we will be finished in that small community. The bishop can just finish us off, they say. And the other aspect of this tremendous guilt is also, misguided, in my estimation. But what's going to happen to the poor priest? We don't want to ruin his priesthood. We don't want to create unnecessary scandal in the community. And ultimately, quite a few of them back out. They come forward with information, and this is across the board in different countries, Western and non-Western countries, and they say, well, for the good of the church, we choose not to reveal this information. So please, put your story on hold. They fail to realize, however, that if this is not brought into the open, if the deeds of darkness, as the Bible says, are not brought to the light, they will continue to fester. And that is going to be even worse for the good of the church.
Yeah, we've had that same experience on this side of the pond with so many whistleblowers. Please pray for the whistleblowers, especially whistleblower priests, that God grant them the courage to come forward to help clean up the church, and pray that when they do come forward, God will protect them, or at least give them the grace to accept martyrdom in whatever form it comes. Jules, thank you so much for bringing all these rather alarming updates to this troubled story.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks again for watching today's episode of Rome Dispatch. This show is brought to you by donors like Real Estate for Life. If you're looking to buy or sell a home and want to support our mission, visit realestateforlife.org. Again, that's realestateforlife.org. Be sure to tell them Church Militant sent you. God bless.